The old people have a say, drip, drip this full bucket. We don't have to start, as some people say, when I get an increase in salary, when I get more money, then I will start.
It is felt that you have to have a large sum of money to start investing, right? Which is furthest from the truth. Because those very persons who have millions of dollars did not all start off with millions. They would have started off with smaller amounts as well, but they would have exercised discipline. You don't set out in business to fail, but if you do, for whatever reason, know that it is not the end of the world and that you learn from whatever may have been the challenges or what would have caused you to fail, and you go again.
Entrepreneurship, its role in terms of generational wealth creation.
We need to make fundamental changes in our spending habits and in our decision making, in how we do things. What skill sets that exist within yourself as an individual, within the community or your family members that you can leverage on to help build an empire upon. And that entrepreneurship context will take us into the next generation and the generations that you mentioned, because you will go beyond the 2 or 3 generations. You can build your empire that lasts. We at WESCU, we are willing to work with people like that, so we help you to start off. The fundamentals of the cooperative society is to help you to move from one stage of your life financially to the greatest stage that you can achieve.
Good evening, fellow cooperators, and welcome to WESCU's 5th webinar. And this webinar is entitled Generational Wealth Creation. We thank you for your time, and we are streaming live from our boardroom at number 45th Street in Port of Spain. Before we go into our actual discussion, as usual, let us invite the Holy Trinity in our midst. So let us open with a word of prayer. So, Heavenly and Eternal Father and Friend, the great Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides, we thank you for your bountiful blessings this evening and each and every day of our lives. We thank you, Lord, for providing for us each and every day. Your grace and mercies, they are fresh each morning as we open our eyes. We also thank you for the understanding that it is your divine providence for all of us to live lives that are financially healthy, in addition to good health and unshakable faith. Jehovah Jireh, as we celebrate International Credit Union Month under the theme, Building Financial Health for a Brighter Tomorrow, I pray in Jesus' mighty name that we make the necessary changes in our lives to live a holistically prosperous life. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. And this prayer is offered to God Almighty, the great Jehovah Jireh, who provides for us without any disrespect or discrimination to other religious beliefs. On my right this evening, I have the pleasure with sitting with you to discuss generational wealth creation, Ms. Maxine King, Wealth Manager from First Line Securities Limited. Maxine, welcome this evening.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
As well.
Good evening. And to my left, I have Mr. Deonecio Salazar, our director and our in-house economist of Western United Credit Union. Mr. Salazar, welcome.
Thank you, Mark, for having me here.
And thank you for your time and for being here. And I will drop the Mr. and call you, as I fondly call you, Dio.
Correct.
Right. So, as we begin this evening's discussion, I want everyone to understand the importance of creating generational wealth. And I will start with a quote from Ecclesiastes 10:19 that says, Ecclesiastes 10:19, so you could run for your Bibles and if you wish to follow. And it says, a feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. Let's ponder on that for a while. So in essence, what it is saying here is that while we prepare and we go through our summertime, it is okay to enjoy your earnings, but we must use wisdom to put and to build a secure future by creating generational wealth. So, as we live our legacy to leave a heritage for our family, that is what it is all about. So, Maxine, the brilliant mind on board tonight. Right. What is generational wealth creation? And what is its importance of us as maybe young or old persons taking the opportunity to create that wealth?
Mark, I can give you two different answers to your question with respect to what is generational wealth. Many times when we talk about financial wealth, when we talk about wealth and wealth accumulation, we talk about financial assets.
Yes.
Right? But it is my view that generational wealth and what is transferred from one generation to the next is much more than just financial assets. And when I talk about financial assets, I'm including traditional assets as we know them, shares, bonds, notes, right? Even we can include real estate, property, and we can also include in that businesses that a family or a generation has transferred from one to the next. So generational wealth really is the movement or the conveyance of rights and titles, etc., right, to property, to assets in general, from one generation to the next. And it is generally done traditionally via a transfer mechanism. But as we go along in the discussion today, I want to introduce another idea with respect to how generational wealth can in fact grow and develop over generations.
I wait with anxiously to hear that. I'm going to throw a little question to my partner here on the left of me. So we got an appreciation of what generational wealth creation is about, and my question to you is a very easy question, and this is another brilliant mind here. So, generational wealth creation. Some persons may be sitting right now in their living room thinking, but I am a poor person. What Mark and Maxine and Dio telling me about creating generational wealth? Do you have to be a rich person to accumulate wealth or to create or leave a heritage for your family to inherit?
No. Those things can actually start from simple changes in spending habits. I fundamentally believe that one has to sit and chart a course by identifying your goals, your objectives, and how you intend to build that generational wealth. So, a simple thing as let me use an example. When you decide you want to save towards an objective, you translate that into now saving for children. Let's say, for example, that you have children and you want to save to pass that on to that next generation. Then what you would do is you would set and chart a course on how you're going to transfer and what you plan to leave. So as Maxine would have mentioned about transferring assets, then you decide what you want to build. So you sit and you look at your position and you make fundamental changes, because in some cases it would be fundamental changes, because you mentioned being poor. And if you're at that level of society, you would want to now say, how do I acquire assets in terms of what Maxine presented, bonds, treasury bills, property? How do you acquire that from where your position is? It would require fundamental changes in your spending habits. You may have to stop liming, for example, as we talk here in Trinidad, we talk about liming. So let's look at our liming habits and we say, okay, we're going to curb that and we're going to start saving for that future. So we take that money and we put it towards goals and objectives that will allow us to achieve assets that we can transfer on to the next generation. So we can start from any position, but the best thing is to start from today. Don't wait.
Today.
Yeah.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
So, when I heard the theme, building financial health for a brighter tomorrow, this was one of the themes that really resonated with me, because this is what WESCU is all about. This is what the cooperative movement is all about. It is about lifting persons out of poverty and a sense of hopelessness. So, as we try to do this afternoon, and I like what you said, it is about now, it's about being aware of who you are as an individual at this point in time, what you may be doing that is blocking you from creating that wealth, or you might be in your family business, and mommy and daddy is now coaching to leave or to transfer that wealth onto another generation. Maxine, how is that done? I have worked hard over the years. I may have inherited the business from my great-great-grandmother or my grandfather or my father, who have worked so hard over the years. And now I want to ensure that the wealth that we have created remains in the family, that it continues to grow, it continues to blossom as we pass it on from generation to generation.
So when I initially responded to you, I would have talked about transferring assets, right? And generally, a traditional way to transfer the assets would be by, and I'm not a lawyer,
Yes.
we just see that up front, but generally speaking, we know that one of the two traditional methods that are used are preparation of wills, using trusts, and one may even say, well, trusts, establishing trusts are for people who have a lot of money. And I say, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be. You may have some things of value that you feel that you can place in a trust for your beneficiaries, whether they are your children, your grandchildren, whatever, that they will get at a later stage, maybe after you die, maybe when they turn a certain age and you feel that they're in a position to be mature to handle whatever it is you want to transfer to them. My position is, however, is that we should start looking at intergenerational wealth, and building on that by transitioning, as distinct from just transferring. Because transitioning means that you start to plan for passing on wealth from generation to generation while you are still alive. And it therefore means that you are involving, let's say, the family. So it could be a nuclear family, it could be extended family. It depends. You may have children who are married, so now you're talking about in-laws and that kind of thing, or maybe children who are single, and you're talking about a nuclear family, but the idea of preparing them to treat with the assets that you have developed and want to develop in a manner that will ensure continuity, that will ensure that when those assets are deployed, whatever assets that you have, that they will in fact grow. So I want to latch on a little bit to what Deo said about starting now. And, where he talked about your aims and objectives, I want to say you have to start with a vision. You have to start with a vision as to where you want, and starting with a vision means you have to assess where you are now and where you want to get to, right? But it also involves you, it also involves the other members of that unit, where you get them to be part of the process. And why I'm saying that, Mark, we have seen so many examples of wills being done, right? Or maybe even trusts, where you have a trustee. The will may not have set out in enough detail what you want done with your assets after you die, and you find all sorts of confusion takes place after you die. People come with another will, or people contesting the will. The beneficiaries of the assets that are contained within the will are looking at how much you get as distinct what the other person get, and there's a whole, to use our local parlance, a whole lot of bacchanal surrounding that. And at the end of the day, what happens? You may find that all that you've sacrificed and worked hard for during the time when you were alive goes to naught, because people have a sense of entitlement, and they get whatever it is they get from you and then probably waste it away. Whereas if you look at and I'm not saying that all transition processes will arrive at a success story, but to me it puts you in a better place, because now you are involving people at the start, where they get to understand your story. They get to understand the story of your previous generation, how they got what they get. They get to understand what it is you want. You get to understand what it is they want. They get to appreciate what you did to be able to give them something. And therefore you work collectively, right, to arrive at that vision. Right, and what it does, it teaches so much to the beneficiaries, the expected beneficiaries of whatever you have to transfer, because you're talking about developing a plan that will require a certain degree of collectivism. It will require development of communication skills, relationship skills, and I want to introduce even another idea. When we look at a will or we look at a trust, it's after, the beneficiaries get things after you die, right? When you're in transition mode and you're creating this plan based on a vision that you have while you're alive, now you can look at the human capital. So whoever the members are of your unit, of your family unit, you can look at what they can bring to the table. A lot of the times we have family members and we look at them and we only see what they can't do or what they cannot bring to, but we don't look at what they can in fact bring to the table. Right? So we could look at that. We could look at their intellectual capital. What do we have within our family? We have people with different skills, different educational levels, different competencies, etc. We can leverage all of that, right? Then of course we have a financial capital. Now some people may say, depending on where they are in life, that listen, I don't have nothing much to put in the pot, right? What's she talking about? Because I didn't inherit anything, but you can start. And I want to introduce the idea as well of entrepreneurship, because that is also a way by which you can not only develop wealth, right, but also you can do it in such a way that you can ensure that your community or your family benefits from the spoil, from what is generated. And so we can learn from other ethnicities, because we see it in our society with other ethnicities where entrepreneurship is encouraged and they support one another in terms of their businesses. Why can't we do the same thing? Or why do we have to wait until we die to be able to talk about generational wealth? To me, doing it before, what you do is something you're able to remove, let's say, the whole idea of entitlement, because it's that entitlement thing that causes all kind of competition with children after, rivalry. They vex with one another, who in talking to one another, and and all those sorts of things. And you have legal proceedings as to who get what, who shouldn't get, and all that kind of thing. I'm saying if you deal with it differently from upfront, then perhaps you may be able to avoid some of that, because we hear too many horrendous stories. And quite coincidentally, in the past 3 weeks, I've heard about different scenarios where somebody dies, and then people come out of the woodworks, and all of a sudden they want this, they want that, they contribute to it. They don't have a clue as to how the person got what they got, but they come in to get it.
So as you spoke about entrepreneurship, and this is the entrepreneurship, man.
Yes.
Right? So I am glad that you use that word there, and I am happy to hear about the transition, and I am happy to hear that you spoke about a vision, a compelling vision, a vision that must light the pathway for people to understand where your wealth came from, and that you want that wealth to be passed on, but it must grow. And as I am passing it on to this generation, I expect this generation to pass it on to the other generation, and as we continue to grow as we go along. So, Deo,
Doctor,
entrepreneurship.
Well,
where does entrepreneurship play its role in terms of generational wealth creation?
Mark, I was really pleased to hear Maxine mention entrepreneurship, because as you would know from those who were listening to the budget, the government is focusing on that. And one of the challenges is that we don't seem to have enough of it taking place in our economy. But I'm not going to go down that road. The question is, are we entrepreneurial minded? And are we prepared to make the sacrifices? Because I would have said earlier that we need to make fundamental changes in our spending habits and in our decision making, in how we do things. So if you decide to go down the way of entrepreneurship, Maxine would have touched on a point in terms of your human capital. What skill sets that exist within yourself as an individual, within the community or your family members, that you can leverage on to help build an empire upon, if you identify the vision as Maxine would have indicated. So I'll use a simple example. There are many tailors back in the day that we would have been familiar with, and we probably no longer use them anymore, most of us. But if that skill set was honed, then empires similar to Calvin Klein, Fubu, who we know about, could have been built upon locally. And it would be nice to see those skill sets revisited, because we see, for example, right now, there are opportunities presented for those types of skill sets in the market at this point in time, because the spending power isn't there. So if you decide to change your spending habit, let's use a simple example. I could decide, because I have a skill set within the household that I have, to make clothing, or to even make linens, curtains, and I could start with those simple spending concepts of going forward and purchasing the raw materials and creating an industry within the household that I then sell to my friends, neighbors, family members, and I build on that. I create a business entity, as Maxine suggested, a vision. So I create a business entity, and I then manufacture from a sole trader perspective, if that is the case, because I mentioned individual, or I go to a company, which is a limited liability, which we can't talk about today, but I can build an empire off of that, and that entrepreneurship context will take us into the next generation, and the generations that you mentioned because you will go beyond the 2 or 3 generations. You can build your empire that lasts beyond well into. You remember we had companies, or you know that there are companies that last 100+ years and they're still in existence today. So let's see if that could be built upon. And there, I mean, we at WESCU, we are willing to work with people like that. So we'll help you to start off, because, as you mentioned, the fundamentals of the cooperative society is to help you to move from one stage of your life financially to the greatest stage that you can achieve.
But are you willing? And when I say are you willing, it starts with discipline, changing your mindset,
Correct.
repositioning your thinking. But before I go into that, let's go to a commercial break.
Finances is really one of the biggest and most common sources of discord in families and in relationships.
How do we handle that?
You need to be on the same page with members of the household. One person can't be thinking, nah, we're gonna get through this, and spending and living life as if they were before this pandemic or before this storm hit us. We need to be able to address what our priorities are. What are the essentials that we need to be looking at? Should our situation become even more challenging, we have something to be able to fall back on, no matter how small it is, but really being able to build ourselves in that way.
Good evening to those of you who are joining us live here at WESCU headquarters on number 40 Fitz Street, Woodbrook. And to my right, I have Ms. Maxine King, Wealth Management, and she is from First Line Securities Limited. And to my left, I have Mr. Deonecio Salazar, only known as Deo. And he is one of our directors and also our in-house economist. So before we break, we were talking a bit about entrepreneurship. And we really spoke on a lot of good things. And some of on the commercial, you would have seen some very important aspects that you must adopt into your life. So, if we want to create generational wealth, now we know that generational wealth is more than just savings. That's so, guys?
Correct.
Right? So, when we talk about generational wealth, we are talking about investments. But it starts with the savings, as Deo would have told us earlier. And for us to acquire wealth, it doesn't matter what strata of life we come from. We all have the ability. And before I go to that, in one of our discussion, Maxine, we were discussing that when people talk about wealth, that they think that they have to create this wealth and become millionaires. And that is not what we are saying. We are saying that whatever financial position you are in, that you can take as little as you can extract from that and start to build your financial nest egg. Dio spoke about starting from now. And I was very happy that you said that because that is what WESCU did from the onset of COVID. We said in the midst of your challenging period, this is the time that you should start to save and put aside
Correct.
a nest egg. So we start with a compelling vision. And after we have that compelling vision, we share it with our family. We must be self-aware of who we are as individuals and what is preventing us from becoming financially healthy, building financial health for a brighter tomorrow. And I think that they were very deliberate. Building financial health, not wealthy, health, because it starts with self-awareness, who you are, where you are, what do you want to accomplish, and then your conscience must guide you, that wisdom. In one of the advertisements, you would have seen that the Miss Jitan Johnson said that it means that all parties must be on board in the discussion of where we want to go as a family in terms of our financial soundness. Maxine, the old people have a saying, drip, drip, this full bucket, yes?
Yes.
Right. So we don't have to start, as some people say, when I get an increase in salary, when I get more money, then I will start. How do we start from whatever little? And I know from time to time I would call you, because that is what we are about at WESCU. We are about putting people on the financial pathway to create financial wealth. And I will call you and say, Maxine, I have this person I want you to talk to in terms of investment, in terms of, okay, I am retiring, I have additional money. Of course, you must bring some in WESCU, right? But at the end of the day, we want you to invest in something that will bring additional returns to you. So, the drip will fill bucket. And what kind of investment vehicles can someone use to start to build on that, to create a financially sound future? You must be saying, okay, all of that, Maxie, that's that question.
Mark, before I answer your question, if you will allow me.
Of course.
I want to put it in context, because you touched on a lot of things there, right? But to me, the heart of what you referred to is really the need for financial education, financial literacy, for people to understand the difference between, let's say, what savings and what investments. A lot of people don't know that there's a difference between the two.
Yes.
Right? But more importantly, I think we're making the assumption that people are starting to save or maybe to invest from a certain age. I want to inject that we have to create in the mindsets of our children, and if we have grandchildren, our grandchildren, that the idea of saving from a very, very, very early age. Long time we used to have piggy banks.
Yes.
And we used to put our little coins and things in there. Well, coins are no longer in vogue, but but we used to put coins in there, and that created a certain mindset with respect to saving, right? And I'm saying that we really should be ensuring in each and every family, in each and every household. It doesn't matter, and I like the analogy you used about drip, drip, the bucket must fill, because in introducing that to small children, you letting them know that, listen, you can in fact save. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of money, but whatever you get, right? You don't have to spend all. You could put some in your piggy bank, and then it could go in. You could put it in the bank or by a mutual fund or whatever. And you get them in that mindset so that as they continue on their life journey, they understand the importance of doing that consistently.
Yes.
But coming back to the point of financial education, when we're talking about savings, we put aside funds for specific reasons, right? It may be for vehicle repairs, for life insurance, or those kinds of things. Whereas with investment, we really put in money to work. We placing our money in instruments where our money would work for us. While we sleep in our money working for us, what is commonly referred sometimes to as passive income.
Okay.
And there are different types of instruments that one can invest in, all right? You can invest in, if you're given your risk appetite, you can invest in shares, for instance. We have a stock exchange where there are shares traded on the stock exchange, and if you're so inclined, you can buy shares on the stock market, right? If you have a long-term vision with respect to how you want to invest, you can invest directly in note instruments. For instance, at First Line Securities, we are arrangers for private companies who would issue notes from time to time, and we allow individual investors to participate in those note instruments directly, or for instance, depending on the dollar value of what you have as part of your holdings, we can in fact manage a portfolio of assets for you. If you have a certain dollar value of funds at your disposal. So there are different ways. There are open market operations, for instance, where you can actually walk into the central bank and you can bid on buy treasury bills, etc. Of course, depending on what you're invested in there and what kind of returns you're looking for, it may not make sense for you at the time. Again, it depends on the risk capital, what kind of returns you're looking for, how long you want to invest for, and those kinds of things. But those are some of the instruments that you can look at for investment purposes, as distinct from savings, where you just put in your money in a savings account and you're getting, now we're in negative interest territory, because when you look at the 0.2 or whatever, let's say if you have your money in a bank, 0.2 interest rate that you're getting, and you consider the fees, etc., that you have to pay for having your money in the bank, you really in negative interest territory, right? So that those are all compelling reasons to start looking at accumulating sufficient funds to be able to put aside money for investment. Now, having said that, we have to bear in mind that some people are not at the stage in life that they can start to invest. But we can introduce again with the financial education a certain mindset that people understand that, listen, that is where I have to take it, right? If I'm really serious, not just about me, but about transferring that wealth or transitioning that wealth from me that I want to accumulate from me to my family, to my children, or whatever. So I hope I've answered your question, because I may have gone all over the place. I'm not quite sure.
No, but you did. You did answer the question, and one of the things that I want to ask is, because we tend to become stuck. And I was listening to a video this morning, and I found it to be so apt for what we are discussing this evening. And it was a different take on generation. They were talking about generational, that in our lives we have to break that generational curse. So my family, I was born into an impoverished family, and I just want the viewers to know that when we talk about poverty doesn't only mean from an economic standpoint. So we just want to get that clear. Sometimes because of our habits, of our thoughts towards ourselves and our thoughts towards our finances, we create a block there that hinder us from moving in for that financially healthy position that we desire. So we have to become so aware, self-awareness of our generational behavior. And how can I, as an individual, attempt to change that behavior to create the wealth that I want to leave for my family? And my question to you before I jump over to Deo would be, I have an average income. Mark, Deo, Maxine talking all this thing about generational wealth creation. Where are getting it from? I am not working for any big. You're talking about investment in shares and all this sort of thing. But when I hear First Citizens Bank or Western United Credit Union have shares and coming, how do I now say, okay, I may not have a lot, but do I still have a chance with the little capital I have to get my feet in the door and allow it to grow? Do we have that opportunity as someone who is not from a financially sound background?
Well, it comes back to your mindset, right? Generally speaking, in the wider society, it is felt that you have to have a large sum of money to be able to start investing. And investing is only for the wealthy. And people consider wealthy to mean people who have millions of dollars, right? Which is furthest from the truth. Because those very persons who have millions of dollars did not all start off with millions. They would have started off with smaller amounts as well, but they would have exercised discipline. Deo talked about spending habits. We didn't get into things like budgeting and whatnot, but there's an aspect of it where you don't go, you don't hang your hat higher than your hand can reach, and those kinds of concepts, right? Where you will in fact have to make changes to be able to start putting aside something small, and that something small will grow. Now you have to have patience as well, You have to
I'd rather
have
use that. You're going to have it written
patience.
down. Patience.
Because this is not instant coffee.
Yes.
This is not magic.
Yes.
That, a wash, as soon as I start to save, I must see it
Mm-hmm.
grow and flourish. It will,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to have the patience and the discipline to, to wait,
Mm-hmm.
to see it to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to bring that back to the whole idea of your vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? What gets focused gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if you're just saving without an end sight in mind, without thinking about, okay, where I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
or even how do I want to be viewed when I die? What's the legacy I want to leave? How do I want to be when people say my name?
Mm-hmm.
What do I want them to associate me with? All of those things you should be thinking about when you are in fact putting together that vision, right? But to come back to the point about the investing, I don't know that it is going to be an overnight thing, right? But you have to have those ingredients: the discipline, the patience, right? The vision. You have to have it, and if you don't feel that you know how to do this, then you can always seek out a trusted advisor or whatever who will be able to assist you in getting to get into that place, right? So that's what I would suggest. But I don't know that because you don't have a whole lot of money, it means that you cannot start thinking or even introducing the idea of investing.
So, thank you, dear Maxine. And you spoke about entrepreneurship. Now, it is easy to encourage people to become entrepreneurs, but there are some characteristics that we must possess if we want to become successful entrepreneurs. And if in becoming successful entrepreneurs, to leave, and I like to start with, to live your legacy, because we are living our legacy. And it's only when we die then the people will start to talk about it. With each and every day of our lives, we live our legacy. And then we leave a heritage for our families to grow and to continue. What are some of the characteristics? Because it is good to encourage people about entrepreneurship and get involved in entrepreneurs, but we all know that sometimes it is not all that easy.
No, it doesn't.
So what are some of the characteristics that one must possess to be an entrepreneur?
Good question, Mark. There's a multifaceted approach once you become an entrepreneur. We talked about honing your own skills firstly. So taking that away, now you have to have that personality trait and that inertia inside of you that says, I'm going to do this. I'm committed. So you have to be committed. So you have to be committed to that ideal, that vision, as Maxine suggested. You have to be willing to make those sacrifices, because I know we're talking about choices and sacrifices here effectively. So let's go back to the tailor example I brought. Once you decide, I have this skill set and I'm competent enough, I've gotten the training, so you need training in whatever it is you decide to take place or take on. So you decide to take on a particular skill set, you have to make sure that you're properly trained. You have to get guidance, because Maxine mentioned about getting information from outsiders in terms of persons who are probably in the field of relevance. So if you're not certain of, for example, how you undertake your bookkeeping, for example, you come to WESCU as we know, and we'll probably refer you to someone who can help you with that within our membership. Then you have to get financing. We will help you with that as well, and you have to understand the financing. So you will speak to a competent person. You have to also take into consideration what are your... There's a new thinking, and I don't know if Maxine will support it. They're saying that from the World Trade Organization that you start with your comparative advantage before you get into your competitive advantage. So you may not be able to develop a product to compete with Calvin Klein, per se, but your product is viable enough that you can sell to our managers, for example, our staff, because you're providing a good quality product that is durable and could be utilized for the purpose that is required. Then you have to have that tenacity to go forward to get market as well. So if you lose those characteristics or you become unwavering, then chances are you fail. Because you now no longer committed. You feel that the world is against you. And those things tend to happen to entrepreneurs. So you have to find a body of persons that you can lean on for support. Not necessarily friends or family. Sometimes it might be absolute strangers.
Yes.
I have seen that for myself, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it's best to have that support outside, because family and friends may not necessarily support you in what your vision is, as Maxine suggested. So I said it has to be that tenacity within you, that inertia in you, that I am going to achieve this, and you're committed towards it like that. So those two things, you see, commitment, it will take you to the end and to achieve the objective. You have to really do a lot of research. Once you become an entrepreneur, you have to continuously be researching. You have to understand a lot of things. I spoke about bookkeeping, your accounts. I spoke about tax. I haven't spoken about taxes. You have to understand the taxes in the system that you're working in. You have to understand what is the best quality materials. For example, if you're using the tailor example, where am I going to source the best quality? You have to understand the supply chain. I mean, we could go in depth here, but effectively, I always say that entrepreneurs have to have firstly that commitment. They must have that willingness to learn, and they should have that ability to go out there and get the information irrespective of the no's. Face the no's, because the no's are always going to be there, but the yeses are there.
Yes.
You just need to find the guidance. And once you get the guidance, you run with it. And you can be successful. There's nothing that stops entrepreneurship, and there's nothing that stops our committed entrepreneur in my mind.
And I would like to add, if I can.
But of course, I am only the moderator. The show is yours, but we have 9 more minutes. Go ahead.
Some degree of agility, and I believe that all entrepreneurs should. You don't set out in business to fail, but if you do, for whatever reason, know that it is not the end of the world, and that you learn from whatever may have been the challenges or what would have caused you to fail, and you go again. To me, a true entrepreneur is able to rise and go again.
Yes.
Correct.
And I totally agree with that. Because sometimes you may start a business and you may start it off hot and sweaty because, oh gosh, I need to make money. And that should not be your main focus. Yeah? Yes? And then you may fail. But was the business that you got into, was that really your core competencies? Was that really the anointing? Was that really the business that you were supposed to get into? So the time always seemed to run away when we're having fun. I can't believe that it is almost 7 o'clock. But in terms of creating wealth, generational wealth creation, and living your legacy and leaving a heritage for your family, that, as far as I'm concerned, is not impossible for any one of us.
No.
We just have to have patience, as you rightfully said. We have to have the determination and the encouragement. We have to have that unflagging commitment that you spoke about, Deo.
True.
Even in the midst of your challenges, you have to keep your eyes focused on your goal. And in one of our first conversations, I remember that I said, I want you to come in and sit with our credit committee, because how we going to structure some of the loans is that investment will become part of it. You invest in your shares in the organization, we have our rainy day fund, but part of the loan, that the portion will be given to you, will be for you to start your investment portfolio. That, of course, is still on the table, and we will be pursuing that because it is very important. We want to ensure that our membership, you out there, have the tools to work with to build your financial health for a brighter tomorrow. And the only way that you can do so is by ensuring that you have a compelling vision. Yes?
Correct. Vision.
A compelling vision for your future. And in having a compelling vision for your future, we have to bring self-awareness into it. Who am I? What you spoke about risk appetite. I might be very scary, and I say, Maxine, you see me? All I want is half of that. Me going for the whole hog. Right? And maybe as I continue to go along the way, I become more brave and all of that. And in becoming self-aware of who I am as an individual, where I am, where I want to be, the fundamental part of that as well is including your family.
Yes.
Because everybody must be on board.
Yes.
Everybody. So it may mean that we say, listen, mommy or daddy cannot afford this at this time. Instead of, we cannot afford it, but we are teaching the children the wrong, help me here, Maxine. We are teaching them the wrong behavior towards finances. That you align to your finances, saying that you can afford what you can't. So when we bring the whole family into the process, to me, that is where the creation of generational wealth will start. That everybody has the same mindset. And then you have the conscience. Then you have, after that, you will have your independent will. Do I have the will to prod on?
Correct.
Do I have the will to ensure that my family understands where I want to take them and where I want my business dead and gone, but I still want it to live on. All the blood, sweat, and tears, I still want my business to flourish. And I want to ensure that that customer care that I had within my business live on as well. So, and then we have the creative imagination. Yes?
Yes.
And there's a simple thing that we can do as well in our families, is to sit and have dinner time.
Oh, Maxine, man, you're preaching. Yes.
Where we sit and we have dinner and we converse and we share ideas.
Yes.
We give stories. The older ones can give stories of the past. The younger persons can talk about their own visions. And, as a collective, you come up with your step-by-step or your process for building that very generational wealth that we came here to talk about today.
You might want to add 10 of the foods during that dinner time.
But that is a given.
That goes without saying.
But
I wanted to say,
we have 3 more minutes. 1 minute goes to you, Dio. 1 minute goes to you, and then I will wrap up.
Well, actually, just to add on to the point that was about to me, I'm looking at responsibility, because what I've seen is once you decide, for example, to sit with the family, then you can start assigning responsibilities. And what we need is for people to understand their role and their responsibilities. And Mark, you do it effectively here at WESCU, where you assign roles and responsibilities based on the personality and the competence of the individuals. So, as Maxine mentioned, the family, you sit at the head of the family and you assign those roles and responsibilities. And those roles and responsibilities should be aligned and to help with the vision that Maxine mentioned, so that we get to that vision by you taking your part and doing it effectively. And that's where I would start.
Maxine.
And if we could take a lesson out of a well-run company, companies would look at succession planning. And to me, when you're talking about generational wealth, you're really talking about succession planning. How is the next generation going to benefit or to succeed, or how is the next generation going to be better than this last generation? What are they going to do? Who is going to lead the charge? As Dio made a good point, who's going to be responsible for what? So I think that those things are really, really, really very important. Yes.
So we have someone who is reliable and responsible and who would bring us back on track if we are going off track. Yes? So, Maxine, I thank you. I thank you for your time, for your wealth of knowledge, for your expertise, and coming here to help our organization grow. I really do thank you. Deonecio, our in-house economist.
Welcome.
You always keep us on our toes. I thank you very much for your expertise as well.
Welcome.
And to our viewing audience, I thank you for your time. I hope this evening's discussion was very fruitful and beneficial to you. And just don't go away thinking, oh gosh, this is just another webinar, another session. Sit with your family. Understand where you want to go, where you are at, where you want to go, and what sacrifices that you must make. Because sometimes people don't like to hear that word sacrifice.
True.
But sometimes the wealth that we desire to see must come through sacrifices. We at Western United Credit Union, we are more than willing to help you create your generational wealth so that as you live your legacy, you leave a heritage for your loved ones to grow on. Thank you for your time. Good evening and God bless.